Today, they'll be sharing just one of the projects that they worked on during their time in the program, their capstones. In addition to what we're presenting today or what they're presenting today, our students have also completed a personal branding project, worked on their online portfolios, written case studies, created a new resume, CV, planned a job search, practiced and held mock interviews, attended 10+ lunch and learns with industry leaders, redesigned a luxury travel application, attended over 60 lectures, kept a journal, participated in weekly retrospectives. That's a lot, okay? So you guys should be congratulated for getting through all of that. But today we're going to be looking at what really is their first professional project of their fledgling UX UI careers. The work that you'll be seeing was done over the course of roughly 8 weeks for real clients. You'll only be seeing a fraction of their total work. I can assure you that there was a lot more that was done behind the scenes. Before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to the team at BCA and to BCA's founders, Benny and Alex, the guys with the vision for all of this. I'd also like to thank our Director of Education, Josh Burke, our UX design curriculum writer, Maria Genovese, and my former teaching assistant, Mateo Cohen, and my current TA, Colin Hadley. And finally, a big thank you to Sadie Goldfarb, our community coordinator. Thank you all. In addition, I'd like to thank ATM Morris, our fantastic career coach. A huge thank you to our capstone sponsors, VYOA and Glavel. I'd like to thank our Lunch and Learn speakers, a number of whom are with us today. Also thank you, our hiring partners, or thanks to our hiring partners. We have a talented group of students, and hopefully you can get them while they're still available. I'd also like to thank the VSET and the state of Vermont. And last but not least, thank you to our students, current and former, as we have a number of students, former students joining us today. They've worked their butts off over the last 12 weeks. They've taken on every challenge that we've thrown at them and still managed to show up at 9 a.m. for 60+ days with a smile on their face most of the time. They should be proud of what they've accomplished. I'm proud of them. Colin's proud of them. Sadie's proud of them. We're all proud of them. We look forward to sharing some of their work with you today. So let's get started with the Burlington Code Academy's UX Demo Day. And up first is our Vermont Youth Orchestra Association team. Take it away.
Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome.
All righty. Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Welcome to our final presentation of how we researched, imagined, and designed a new website for the Vermont Youth Orchestra Association. My name is Tara Ma, and I had the pleasure of working on this project with Anthony Figueroa, Krista Harder, and Veronica Kovacs. So we set out to solve a problem. You'll find out more about this later. We're going to take you through the process of how we researched and defined this problem and how we ultimately developed solutions. VYOA stands for Vermont Youth Orchestra Association, and we felt fortunate to be helping this organization with their website. The VYOA is a community-based nonprofit with a variety of musical programs, lessons, and training for children of all ages. They came to us with a brief to improve the visual aspect and functionality of their website. They had a focus on 2 pages in particular, the first being their current homepage, which is displayed on the right. They stated that their current homepage is limited, that it doesn't display the breadth of what the organization has to offer. They'd like the page to feature easy navigation to things like their programs, upcoming events, their newsletter, social media, and any ongoing campaigns in order to function more smoothly for an event goer or for a parent who wants to get their child involved. Their second focus was on redesigning the virtual concert hall, a page dedicated to their events, which are currently streaming for safety during the pandemic. Current page is displayed on the right. So they wanted this redesigned page to present clearly the dates and times of the upcoming concerts. In particular, because some events would include separate performances, the new design would need to accommodate multiple times. They also wanted clear access to live stream registration links, as well as information about who is performing. So their ultimate goal was to engage the viewer so that the viewer feels excited to watch multiple performances. After understanding the brief and examining the homepage and virtual concert hall, we took a deep dive into the remainder of the VYOA's current website. And we were able to see for ourselves how the website is struggling to engage the visitor and to organize information. We started by building a sitemap in order to get an overview of the layout and how everything is organized. This picture represents the pages of the site and how they are connected. We also conducted an in-depth content audit to further analyze the information on each of these pages. So here is a small section of the audit with bulleted lists of the type of content that's on the pages, such as the homepage, as well as comments about how that content is functioning or any issues that are evident. So for example, on the homepage, there's a carousel rotating through multiple images and announcements, but only one of these things is clickable. We then met with Rosina Canizero, the executive director of the organization, and Avery MacDonald, the marketing and development manager. We prepared some basic questions to learn more about the organization, as well as to clarify the project. One question we decided to ask was, what makes you feel proud to be part of the VYOA? Rosina answered, you can watch a child grow up here. She told us about the generational feel to the organization, that students join when they're young and they stay for many years. And some of them grow up, start their own families, and now their own kids are part of the organization. And there is just a feeling of shared connection and care for each other within the community. So we learned that while this organization values quality music, they are also committed to acceptance and accessibility, inclusivity, and growth. They are modern as well as classic. They seek out diverse composers. They give significant financial aid to students who may not otherwise be able to join. There is so much more to this organization beyond their program offerings. So after meeting with the organization, we did a comprehensive synthesis of what we learned about them. And from there, we identified the VYOA's 4 main needs and goals. We learned from both the meeting and the brief that they needed the site to be easy to use and to have better organization and prioritization of content. But we also uncovered that they balance classic content with modern content, and we wanted to reflect that in our design. And finally, their sense of community deserved to be front and center on the site. And now I'll hand it off to Anthony, who will talk about our users.
All right. Thanks, Tara. So let's talk about user research. At this point, we understood the VYOA's goals, but we needed to speak with our users of the site to understand their goals, but also their frustrations. We need to answer questions such as who uses the site, what do they use it for, and what do they wish was different. We interviewed a wide range of users, from students and parents involved with the VYOA to donors, board members, and more. We took this opportunity to establish a foundation of empathy by asking the users about their involvement with the organization and their interactions with the site. By empathizing with them, we could better understand their needs and how we could design solutions that help them achieve their goals. So earlier I mentioned we discovered a few frustrations or pain points during our interviews. We found that a lot of these pain points from the current site stemmed from the difficulty imposed by the structure and navigation, as mentioned in this quote. You have to know what tab to look for. Sometimes things seem to be hidden. Also, even when you can find what you're looking for, it's a complicated path to get there. We heard this from one user. Sometimes it would take me 6 clicks to get to the one thing I really needed. Another major pain point was the lack of visual quality. Here we have some feedback that stood out from my interviews. We heard that the site felt dated. It felt muted. The site was text heavy, it was cookie cutter, and there needed to be more images overall. And now that we had their pain points, we asked ourselves, what are our users' needs? We received questions such as, how do I get more information? and who's going to be teaching my kids. It became clear that a major goal was to find information about the mission and history of programs. Users wanted to stay current on what the VYOA is doing, and donors wanted to feel like their money was going to a great cause. They also wanted to register for programs. Parents in particular wanted an easy way to learn about the programs and register their children for participation. They also wanted to see who would be teaching their kids and what the schedule would be and how they could go through the process of joining. Other things we heard were, I mostly use the site to discover events, and the Bravo Club should be on the website more. Users visited the site to discover and access events like student and guest performances online, particularly now in the times of COVID-19. They also wanted to support the VYOA by finding a convenient and easy way to donate. This includes the Bravo Club, which is their monthly donation program. At this point, we were equipped with the knowledge of the VYOA's vision of the future site, and also what the users needed from the site in terms of functionality and design. Our next step was to figure out how we can combine these two into a design solution that fits both of their expectations. To help center ourselves and remain focused throughout the project's lifespan, we defined the combined goals into one problem statement. Our problem statement is as follows. A VYOA site goer needs a clear and engaging experience to find information, register for programs, watch events, and donate regularly so that they can actively participate in and support the VYOA community. We learned that the problem was much deeper than the users need to be able to find what they're looking for. They also needed to feel like they were a part of the community and encouraged to participate while browsing the site. So now that we had a problem statement, we needed a way to keep our users' thoughts and needs ingrained into our minds. So we created personas, which are fictional representations based on real users that help us empathize with our user base throughout the design process. Here we have Emma, who represents our student body, Barbara, the parent, Merle, our community member and concert attendee, and Robert, the corporate donor. Throughout the process, we would ask ourselves questions such as, would Emma find this feature useful? Does Barbara know to look on this page for this information? Or would Robert want his company's logo on this page? So let's take a deeper look into one of our personas. Meet Barbara. This is our persona that represents our parent user segment. She's 42 and lives in South Burlington. She wants her 2 children to participate in programs, but she's having issues finding the information she needs. She's based off of demographic information we gathered from social media analytics, along with other user interviews. These personas were created to ground us during times of confusion or disagreement, but also to keep us on track during the design process. With our problem statement and our personas in mind, we took a look at other websites to get a feel for what other similar organizations were doing. We conducted a competitive analysis of other sites that ranged from other youth orchestras to professional orchestras and other general arts organizations. For each site, we looked at attributes such as their brand identity, their navigation, visual design, colors, photos, and general content. We looked for patterns and conventions, particularly within the youth orchestra space, to better fit our users' expectations. For instance, while the VYOA currently requires a full-page form to subscribe to the newsletter, most other sites simply requested users' names and email addresses at the bottom of the homepage for a quick and easy sign-up. Most sites also relied heavily on dynamic photographs and youthful colors. At this point, we had our own user research. However, we also used some research-based heuristics or general guidelines to help us focus on our design and user needs. These are the 10 usability heuristics. They were identified by Jacob Nielsen, co-founder of the Nielsen-Norman Group, the world's leaders in research-based UX design. We use these to guide us throughout our design process. We'll get into more detail on the most relevant of these later on in the presentation. So now here's Krista to walk us through how we solved our information architecture.
Thanks, Anthony. So after all of our research, it was time to take the plunge and start actually making things. We needed to start with the big picture, the structure of the site as a whole, or in other words, the site's information architecture. As we discovered from our research, the original site layout was confusing. It was a roadblock standing in the way of our users' needs and goals. To solve this problem, we asked ourselves, how might we create a structure that is intuitive, clear, and simple for users? We needed to organize the content in a way that allowed users to achieve their goals while also telling the client's story in a more engaging way. As Anthony mentioned, we applied usability heuristics throughout the design process. For the information architecture, we focused on two in particular: aesthetic and minimalist design, and consistency and standards. The heuristic of aesthetic and minimalist design refers to the concept that in an interface, every piece of information competes with other pieces of information and therefore becomes less visible. We wanted to simplify the navigation so that we could lessen our users' cognitive load and make it easier to find what they need. The heuristic of consistency and standards refers to the importance of using industry terms and conventions because users spend most of their time on other sites and therefore become familiar with those patterns. After hearing that multiple users had issues with the VYOA's navigation, we decided to incorporate conventions from similar sites to make the new navigation more intuitive. With these heuristics in mind, we began reconstructing the information architecture. Here we have the old navigation up top and our new version underneath. We simplified the navigation down to only 5 sections. Based on our competitive analysis, these new headings of who we are, what we do, and get involved better fit industry standards. They're used in many nonprofit and youth orchestra websites, which makes them easily recognizable to users. This language also has a more conversational feel, which brings more humanity to the website and better reflects the VYOA's brand. Nearly all of our users mentioned that they wanted to find more information about the VYOA as an organization. To address this goal, we changed about into who we are and moved it to the very front as a welcoming introduction to the VYOA. Although the old site also had a news section, it contained mostly outdated blog posts ranging back to 2007. We discarded everything in this news section except for one segment, student spotlights. We moved these spotlights to who we are to provide a more holistic view of the VYOA. Not only the mission, history, and staff, but also the very heart of the organization, the students. The next section is what we do. With the old site, several of our users had the misconception that the VYOA only offered orchestras, and several of them expressed confusion about the difference between orchestras and programs. As a more clear and concise way to communicate all that the VYOA offers, we combined all of their programs into one section. Looking back to our problem statement and the ultimate user goal of actively participating in and supporting the VYOA community, the next step is to invite users to get involved with actions such as audition and donate. This section also includes a new page about financial aid to provide more information to prospective families and to communicate the VYOA's mission of bringing music to all children, regardless of financial status. We kept events as its own section, since it was such a major user goal, tweaking it slightly to become our events to reflect the new welcoming feel. And finally, keeping our student and parent personas in mind, we also created a student section. While we originally considered building out a student portal, our research revealed that virtually everything that students and families would be searching for was already public on the website, just difficult to find. Instead of a portal, we created a page that would gather all of the student resources, such as registration packets and important dates, into one place for easy access. After our initial reconstruction of the site, we interviewed 9 people, ranging from an experienced music teacher to a complete music novice, to test our layout. We particularly focused on what we do, as this was the information that caused the most confusion for users on the old website. With their feedback, we made some tweaks to our initial design, such as giving the summer camp its own section within what we do and changing community engagement to community outreach. The feedback helped us create a structure and vocabulary that better fit people's expectations and therefore made the website easier to use. From there, it was time to build out the individual pages within the site structure. For each key page on the site, we created a wireframe, which is essentially a visual outline of the structure of a page. We knew that we needed to establish important content and create a new hierarchy of information, and we needed to show this information in a more visually engaging way. We started this process by looking at one of the most important sections of the website, auditions. As Anthony mentioned in the problem statement, users, particularly parents and students in this case, needed an easy way to register for programs, and auditions are a vital piece of that goal. On the old site, as you can see, information about auditions was spread out across 4 pages. These pages had lots of text and very few visuals to inspire excitement about joining the orchestra. We created this user flow to demonstrate the series of steps that a user had to take to submit an audition on the old website. Originally, the user had to jump back and forth between different pages to get a complete picture of the audition process. Because these pages didn't link to one another, the user had to navigate back to the auditions page between every step. They also had to wait for an instructional email before they could upload their audition to YouTube. To streamline this process, we gathered all of the information from the original 4 audition pages and rearranged it into this wireframe. Later on, we'll add photos, colors, different typography, and more. But just as you would start with an outline to write a paper, we started with these simple boxes as a tool to organize all of the relevant content. As you can see by the elements on the left, which make up the top half of this new wireframe, quotes and photos of students will bring more energy and life to the page and emphasize the fun, communal aspect of the organization. In the elements on the right, which make up the bottom half of the new wireframe, we laid out the entire audition process from start to finish. These changes created a much simpler path for the user to take. Rather than jumping between pages and running the risk of missing something important, the new flow allows the user to access all of the resources and information that they need in one place before uploading their audition to YouTube. We repeated this process of gathering and prioritizing the content for each key page of the site, building wireframes that would better fit our users' needs and tell the client's story. And now I'll hand it over to Veronica, who will discuss how we turn these wireframes into a fully finished design.
Thank you, Krista. All right, so now that we had the basic structure down, our next step was to breathe life into design. We needed to use color, typography, and other interface elements to express the client's brand and values, meet users' needs, and alleviate their frustrations. We used something called the style tile as a visual representation of those elements. Style tiles consist of color palettes, fonts, buttons, logos, and mood boards. These help us give an idea of what the site will look like. So first, we wanted to determine the color palette. The client felt as though their current color palette, as seen on the left, was outdated and a little too juvenile to represent their brand anymore. We compiled a few style guides with color palettes that better represented the VYOA. We drew inspiration from their history, building, vision, inspirational sites, even their current color palette, along with colors they suggested. With input from the client, we ultimately decided on this. We chose the mahogany red because it was reminiscent of wooden string instruments. The turquoise and golden yellow were inspired by the organization's building, as well as influenced by the history of the organization. The VYOA was founded in the 1960s, and we wanted a color palette that was retro but classic to reflect that history. That retro inspiration also influenced our choice of typography. We went with a classic serif font for our headers and a modern sans serif font for our body copy to reflect that duality of a classic yet visionary feel. Combining the colors with typography, buttons, and mood board, we had a style tile. Now that we had the main style elements determined, we started to piece them together. As we transitioned from wireframes to mockups, we made sure to design on a 12-column grid to help facilitate responsiveness, or how the site reacts to being sized up and down depending on the device you're viewing it on. On smaller devices, all of the content fits into only one column as opposed to the 12 columns on a full screen desktop view. Using the grid and wireframes as a skeleton, we started building the homepage. One big change we made was changing the carousel highlighted here to a video and making it smaller so as not to take up all the space that first appears when you land on the site. We prioritize programs and events at the top of the page to make it easier for users to navigate and show the breadth of what the VYOA offers. We added call to action buttons for donation and signing up for newsletters, as those were hidden or did not exist originally. Based on our user research, we fleshed out the homepage with lots of photos to tell the story of the VYOA, as well as a prominent vision statement. That visual storytelling showcases the community feel of the organization. The other page we want to showcase is the events page. The events section was originally 2 separate pages, one for their student performances and one for their guest artist series. Because there are only a few events a month, we consolidated these into one page so the users can easily discover other types of events. We pinned a featured event at the top in case there's an event that the VYOA particularly wants to showcase, such as their fall fundraiser. We wanted to accommodate the ability to have multiple dates and times for programs because several of their concerts included multiple groups of students performing at various times. Every page was rethought and redesigned to match the new aesthetic, and we feel better represents the VYOA as a whole. Building off the style tiles we showed earlier, we created a design system to hand off to the VYOA. This includes logos, colors, typography, buttons, and more to guide the client and future developers in designing new pages for the site. At this point in the process, we had all the pieces to our puzzle and it was time to put them together. So here's Anthony to show you how we combined everything into a prototype.
All right, thanks, Veronica. So a prototype is a simulation of the final product. It demonstrates the interactivity of the site to our development team and stakeholders. It's simple and minimalistic in its functionality, but it gives a good idea of how the final product will work. So now I'll take a moment to pause the presentation and take us to our prototype. Okay, so for this demonstration, we're going to focus on the home page and the events page. Here we have our navigation menu, which reflects our redesigned information architecture. Beneath that, we have an image that represents the video that replaced the carousel, along with the VYOA's vision statement. Right up front, we have all of their program offerings. Then we have a section for any news or announcements the VYOA may have, such as the annual fall appeal, followed by a donation call to action and 2 upcoming events. Further down, we have black and white versions of the sponsor logos so as not to compete with the current color scheme. And finally, users can easily and quickly subscribe to the newsletter with just their name and address. So from here, we'll move on to the events page. It starts off with the featured event that we mentioned earlier, which can be anything from a guest artist performance to a fundraiser. We included buttons here to allow users to quickly learn information about the event and register. We then have an overview that will describe the various types of events, along with the season brochure, followed by a colorful list of upcoming events. So once again, I'll take a quick second here to return to our presentation, and then I'll hand it over to Tara to wrap things up.
Thank you, Anthony. So in summary, we started with a project brief, which looked like a simple website redesign of a homepage and an events page. But we uncovered the depth of the organization's community, and we learned more about what our users needed. We then redesigned the infrastructure of the site with research-based heuristics, and we created wireframes of pages to meet our users' needs. We selected color and typography to reflect the client's brand and user expectations. And finally, we created a brand new design, including multiple mockups and an interactive prototype. In other words, we solved a problem. We created a clear and engaging experience for a user to find information, register for programs, watch events, and donate regularly so that they can actively participate in and support the VYOA community. We would like to thank our teachers and mentors at Burlington Code Academy, Rick Mechanic and Colin Hadley, all those at BCA who made this program possible. Shout out to you, Sadie, as well as our Lunch and Learn speakers, some of you I see on our call. Also, of course, thank you to our partners at the VYOA, Rosina Canizero and Avery MacDonald. It was truly a joy to work with you both. Thank you everybody who participated in our interviews and our testing. And of course, thank you to all of you for coming today. And now I'll hand it back to Sadie for any questions.
Thank you so much, Tara. That was awesome. This is my first time seeing this as well, and I'm totally blown away. So thank you so much for sharing it. You all should be really proud. And VYOA, I'm going to check out your website. That's awesome. So I'm going to be reading some of the questions that we have in our chat bar for the next 10 minutes or so. And I'm also going to give people a quick reminder that if you do have a question that you want to add, in your lower part of your screen, there should be a bar where you see a little chat bubble that says chat under it. And if you select that, you should be able to ask your question in there. So the first question that we have is, how much data was coming from your project sponsor versus research you conducted yourself? Did you find it helpful to work with a client in this process?
I can go ahead and take that if nobody else wants to.
Go ahead.
So a majority of it was our own research. I think originally we tried to get some analytics and from all of their various channels, but we wound up only being able to get like analytic information from their social media. So most of it was our own research, basically, and user interviews that we had. What was the second part of that question again?
The second part of the question was if you found it helpful to work with a client in this process.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Rosina and Avery were incredible throughout this whole process. Yeah, they were there giving us information like whenever we needed it. And yeah, they were just a joy to work with.
And may I say specifically, they also really helped us in kind of identifying who those users could be that we would interview. They were very helpful for providing some names of people that we could reach out to that would fit our personas there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a really hands-on approach actually with the research, and yeah, it was incredible.
That's awesome. Definitely what you hope for a capstone to be. And then the next question that we have is, what were some of the most interesting discoveries that you made while working on this project? Anything you wish you knew going in?
I have a lot to say about this, but I want to give my team a chance also to talk about it.
I mean, I definitely want to point to kind of what I talked about in the first part of the presentation, that we also went to this project thinking that the VYOA was a simple youth orchestra, and we learned so much about their community outreach and all of the amazing work that they're doing to make music accessible. And so it was really a joy truly to work with an organization that is doing such incredible work for kids and for the Vermont community in general.
Totally. The next question that we have is, what were some of the things your teammates did that helped you learn and overcome obstacles?
I can take this one, or at least to start with. Our teammate Anthony, he was just incredible with the Figma software, which is like our design software. He really helped us a lot the whole way. I think that all of us really contributed. Like Tara, she was just really great, so empathetic, and always the first one to lend an ear. And Ronnie's like eye for design and color, and just, I don't know, the team, it was just really great.
That's wonderful. Does anyone else have anything they want to add to that?
I mean, I got to shout out Krista too, because like there was a lot of writing that had to be done in this. And I think we all found out how much better she is at it than everyone else here.
So I have a team. That's awesome. It sounds like you all were really able to pull on your strengths.
Yeah, I really felt like we were able to both divide into our separate strengths, but also come together and learn things from each other. It was really interesting to be balancing learning this work while doing it as part of a team. And I really enjoyed balancing that with my teammates.
Yeah, and Tara is an incredible writer as well. Just want to throw that out there.
I love all the team love. The next question that I have for you is, what would you do differently if you were to approach the same problem again?
Can I take this one, guys? I think we learned a lot about time management in this project. Definitely thought that we would be at certain steps faster than we were able to, and learned a lot about how important research was in the whole process. So taking a lot of time to actually conduct the user research, definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think also usability testing and things like card sorting, that's something that I think we all look forward to exploring a lot more in our future careers. And this is really condensed with time and everything, but I definitely would have liked to do more user testing.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then I'm curious, did you get feedback from the client along the way? How many iterations of the design did you end up with?
So we did get, as I mentioned before, quite a bit of feedback from our client. As far as like different iterations, it really depends on the part of the process we're talking about. You know, for wireframe, when we were wireframing, we had a couple of different iterations. We didn't explain like a whole lot of this in the presentation, but the color, like we spent days on like choosing the colors. So we had a lot of different iterations of that. For the mock-ups, again, you know, that was like 3 or 4 iterations. It was a constant process. You know, you think you finished the design. Well, you don't think you finished, but you get it to a point where you're happy with it. You show it to some people, and then you get feedback on that, and you just have to keep reiterating, you know.
Perfect.
Yeah, so for those who are unfamiliar with UX, it's very, it builds on itself, right, a lot. So it's not necessarily that we have 4 different mockups that all look very different, but you know, we started structurally and teased that apart and had different versions of that. And then we added some of the color and had different palettes there. And by the time we got to the mockups, the structure had been in place and whatnot. But it's that cumulative effect that had multiple versions along the way.
Great. And then could adding more images and its effects on conversions be expanded on?
So that's something that I think it would be really interesting to have more like analytical data on. Unfortunately, we didn't really get a chance to have that, but we knew that it was a really important part of communicating their brand and really telling their story, and also encouraging people to participate in their organization. So we don't know the specifics, but we know that it was something that was really important to our users through our interviews and important to the VYOA as well.
Awesome. And then sort of the second part to that question is, has the site been built yet, or is this something that will be handed off to a dev team next?
This will be handed off to the client next. We are not totally sure what the development process is going to look like at this point.
Perfect. And then, sorry, give me 1 second. I'm scrolling down. Lots of great questions here. What is the most important thing that you learned personally in this class or while working on this project?
Do we all want to go just like one after another? Okay.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing I learned was mostly about teamwork. I mean, I've worked I come from a retail background, and I worked a lot on teams. But in this project specifically, it was really nice to not only be able to lean on my teammates for parts where like I wasn't my strongest, but also like to learn from that experience. You know, it wasn't just like, hey, Krista, do all the writing. It was like, hey, Krista, I wrote this. Can you take a look at it and you know, and point out like where my flaws are and like what, you know, what I can learn from this basically. So that was the biggest part for me.
I can go next. I think for me, and this goes for the project as well as the class as a whole, is I learned that empathy is definitely really central to UX. And Rick told us that right in the beginning. And it's not that I didn't believe him, but this really showed me what that means in action, of how to keep your users at the front and center all the time, and how easy it is to sometimes veer off, and then the importance of bringing it back. I really got to experience that hands-on, and that made UX more concrete for me.
I was actually also going to say teamwork, but that was super important for me as well. But I think that another thing that I learned was about the importance of showing and communicating your process, which can be something that's kind of difficult to do if you're used to just kind of showing people the final product of all of the work that you put into it. But over and over again, we've learned how important like the whole process from start to finish is, and how important it is to be able to communicate what you're thinking and why you're doing things.
Yeah, so my team hit all my points, so I was just gonna bring it up, guys, that backing up your stuff is actually incredibly important. Halfway through, we lost a major file and had to consisted of all of our information architecture, and we had to build that from scratch, and we only had like a day to do that. So empathy, communication, teamwork, and backups.
Love it. Thank you all so much for sharing that. And so we have time for one more question in this round, but if people are interested, you're more than welcome to hang out at the end after our second group has presented and done their questions as well. We'll have some more time to answer other questions, and whatever we don't get to will be answered and sent in an email. So the last question, you got to tell us about these sketches.
Alrighty, so real quick, my background is in mental health, and I worked at a crisis program for kids before this. And one of the games we would do to kind of just have the kids have fun, it was quick and easy, was called 5-Second Animal. And it's where somebody names an animal, and then the rest of the group has 5 seconds to draw it as quickly as you can. And it was one of the things that I brought to the team, and they decided they wanted to give it a shot, and we used it to just in a few minutes, if we were really stressed out, just kind of diffuse that tension, play something goofy, look at your image in horror and just feel disgusted with what you did. And everybody gets to laugh about it. So it was a really fun way to just keep the team laughing and having fun. And so these are just some of the samples from a very large selection of 5-second animals that we have.
Yeah, if I could just hop in here. I was looking at their Figma file like a week or two ago, and they had all of them nicely laid out. And I was like, you guys have got to publish a little book on these because they're so awesome and so cute. And just, really, really fantastic. So yeah, I hope you guys do that. And if you do, I'll buy your first copy. But nice job with that. And great job with the presentation.
Any publishers in the crowd?
You guys can self-publish, It's the 2020s, baby. All right. So Sadie, should we switch off to the next group?
We shall. Yeah,
okay.
it's
just one quick thing. I just want to say great job, you guys. Fantastic. Also, just to remind everybody, if you have questions, please go ahead and use the chat function in Zoom and put your questions in there. And as Sadie said, we can't answer all the questions in the time that we have, at least in the 10 minutes after each team goes. But we'll get to as many as we can in the 10 minutes, and then we can answer more questions after the second team goes. And then also anything we don't get to there, we'll follow up via email with you guys. But please go ahead and comment, chat in the chat, and any kudos, comments, whatever, questions, please feel free to use that function. All right. Glavel, you guys ready to roll?
Ready. Will, are you all set?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Great job, BYOA. That was a great presentation. Congratulations. My name is Hannah Anderson, and I, along with my talented team members, are very excited to present to you our capstone project that we've been working on throughout our UX Bootcamp at Burlington Code Academy. Our project was focused on a Burlington-based company called Glavel. We were tasked with redesigning their current website, which we will explain in greater detail throughout the presentation. I'd like to introduce my teammates, Mia Karen, Will Hart, and Karen Yuen. For our agenda today, I will share with you some context as well as our challenges, and then I will pass it off to Mia, and she will explain some insights that we gathered along the way, as well as breaking down the processes and analyses we use to arrive at these conclusions. After that, Mia will hand it over to Karen to discuss the methods we use to understand our user and what they are trying to accomplish when they use Glavel's website. To tie it all together, Will's going to share with you how we decided upon our design architecture and the intent behind our design solutions. And finally, I will summarize our findings. Glavel is a foam glass aggregate company. Foam glass is a lightweight, thermally insulating building material derived entirely from recycled glass using no virgin material sourcing. Through a proprietary process, Glavel takes recycled glass, breaks it down, adds a foaming agent, and then heats it in a kiln at extremely high temperatures. The result is foam glass aggregate. The primary use of Glavel is to replace rigid foam board as a subslab insulation underneath buildings or for lightweight green roof fill. It can also be used for infrastructure such as tunnels and roads. Glavel is currently importing their product from their partner in Germany, but they plan to have a domestic and sustainable manufacturing plant by the end of 2021. With that will come an increase in demand as well as a shortening of the sales cycle and a requirement for scaling. This eventually will require the need for a more complex systems architecture and a more methodical data collection systems and analysis, which means an overall increase in site functionality and scalability. In order to accommodate these needs, we needed to discover where the challenges were occurring on their current site and figure out why they were not able to convert site users into Glavel customers. We broke down our design process into 5 categories. For the discovery, after reviewing the project brief, we identified the problem and the vision statement. We collected data and conducted interviews. We then conducted industry analysis as well as competitive analysis. In order to define, we conducted a site audit of Glavel's current website to determine why they weren't converting users into customers. For the ideation,
We were able to create multiple variations of information architecture to establish what some of the most necessary components of the current website were, what needed to be changed or removed, and what was missing entirely. As for the design, we were able to make some highly informed design decisions based off of our research, ideations, and the client's needs. And to deliver, we were finally able to create prototypes of our final design, which is the deliverable my teammate Will is going to present to you later on. The client presented us with a list of challenges that were to be addressed. The current Glavel website was not designed to sell and needed clear buyer pathways to generate sales. The site was out of date and needed to be more engaging. Their site was currently designed as a one-size-fits-all concept that did not address the individual needs of the different market segments. Their forms were not dynamic or aesthetically pleasing, and the website needed to be able to scale for future growth. So as you can see here, we created a sitemap of their original site layout. A sitemap represents each page of the website and how it correlates with the following action. From here, we conducted a site audit to assess the client's needs compared to its current design. Their current design does not address different buyer paths. When users would request a quote, it would lead to a form and a dead end, leading to no engagement with other content. As you can see here, these forms do not encourage the user to engage with any other content, which was resulting in the user leaving the site. Here's our redesigned sitemap. We added a customer portal for returning customers and replaced the dead end form with a request a quote, which is much more accessible. This addresses the need to accommodate different buyer paths while encouraging user flow throughout the navigation. Instead of forms with dead ends, we replace them with informational content that leads to site interaction. This will be more intelligible in our higher fidelity mockups. In order to address our clients' needs, we want to improve the information architecture by cleaning it up in order to make purchasing the product easy and actionable. We want information about Glavel and its applications to be obvious and usable. We plan to create new forms that are dynamic and urge the user to engage in the website and ultimately encourage user flow. We want to make sure that the new website is scalable as the client anticipates higher demand for domestic production in the coming years. And we want to provide buyer paths that address the needs of each market segment. In order to implement our vision, we conducted a thorough research based on our clients' feedback and the information we gathered. In order to elaborate our findings, I'm going to hand it off to Mia.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everyone. I'm Mia Karen, and I'll be walking us through our research and what we discovered. When we began our research process, we had to try and understand who Glavel's users are, what their experiences have been with Glavel and the Glavel website, and what types of problems they were having. We started with a SWOT analysis of Glavel's current website. For those who are not familiar, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The first strength we took notice of was Glavel's strong team biographies. Glavel let us know they were planning on transforming their business from a product-based model to a service-based model. They also mentioned that their competitor had a technical, commodified feel to them, and they wanted to appear personable and inviting in comparison. We also discovered a wealth of product guides that help Glavel's customers with different applications. However, among other weaknesses, we also found that these product guides and other resources were difficult to find or get access to. Photos and graphics of the product and its uses were also limited. The overall weaknesses of the site relied upon confusing navigation that made it difficult to find information. We saw all of these weaknesses as a great opportunity to update Glavel's content. We thought Glavel's customers might want to interact with more information, photos, and experiences other customers had with the product. We also saw an opportunity to organize information to make the website easier to use and more comprehensive for the Glavel user. Because Glavel only has one main competitor in the United States, it was easy to acknowledge certain competitors' strengths, like their effective use of case studies. We felt by incorporating the same content, this could be a great opportunity for Glavel to share more about their brand, their product, and how their customers have used their product before. We also took a look at easier to use sites to better understand how we can help Glavel. We continued our research by connecting to Glavel customers and discussing their experiences with Glavel and their experiences with the Glavel website. We asked questions like, do you remember having any problems finding information about Glavel's product? One of our participants told us that he did not know you had to order 30% more Glavel to properly compact and install it. However, he blamed himself for not knowing and told us, the point that we needed to buy 30% extra. If I had been paying close attention, I would have known that. We also received answers like, I think the information was all there and available. It just didn't pan out the way we had thought it would, referring to another difficult installation. This helped us understand that Glavel customers were missing important information that they needed to properly install the product. We also asked questions like, what stands out to you about your experience with Glavel? And we received answers like, they're very responsive, it's been positive and good, and answers like, it's been fairly straightforward, I've been pleased with the process. Several Glavel customers felt satisfied with their experience with Glavel and showed us how Glavel provided great customer service. However, in reference to a delay caused by missing information, another participant said, well, those 2 weeks of project delay were extremely stressful. We worked to address any concerns about missing information so that all necessary information is available on the Glavel website at all times and to make sure this problem doesn't happen again. Another question we asked was, how important is environmental consciousness when it comes to your building projects? And we received answers like, the overall philosophy of it and being useful and green is what drew me to Glavel. And answers like, totally, we are all about that. I like beautiful, soulful, gentle things. Responses like these really helped us see how much people associate Glavel with sustainability and environmental consciousness. In our research, we uncovered some key insights that helped us understand our Glavel user that much more. We uncovered that Glavel customers were struggling with the buying process because of a lack of information on the Glavel website. They had trouble finding information because of confusing website navigation, and they were relying on secondary websites or not using the website at all for information about the product. Glavel customers also told us they were very excited and aware of Glavel's future plans to domestically produce. However, this information wasn't available anywhere on their website. Our interviews also revealed to us that Glavel customers were told information over email or phone that they needed to install the product correctly. As mentioned before in our interview answers, one participant forgot that information and faced major setbacks due to this problem. This got us thinking about how to organize information more effectively on their site. We also heard so much about how responsive and communicative the Glavel team was to work with. Glavel customers were committed to Glavel's brand values, like sustainability, communication, and their great customer service. These brand values were not so obvious on the website. Throughout our interviews, we learned that Glavel customers have a huge love for sustainability, sustainable products, and environmentally conscious building. This got us thinking about how to make Glavel's brand values more prominent throughout their site. We also took a look at Glavel's Google Analytics for the past year and discovered a bounce rate of 60%. Bounce rate refers to the percentage of website visitors that are entering the website and leaving rather than continuing to view other pages. The majority of website bounce rates fall between 26% and 60%. However, most search engine optimization experts have said that as a broad rule of thumb, websites should aim to have a bounce rate of under 40%. This showed us that there was room for improvement and opportunities for Glavel customers to engage with the website more. We also discovered that out of 5,115 page views this past year, only 15 of those views were on the Glavel Learn page. 15 page views accounts for only 0.29% of 5,115 page views. This specific page contained all of Glavel's resources and product guides with important installation information and other significant details. It began to make sense to us as to why some Glavel customers were missing important information about the product. Looking back at the original problem statement, Glavel website users struggle with purchasing the product and navigating the website. We redefined the problem statement to incorporate the findings of our research. Our statement changed to, Glavel website users struggle with getting the information they need about the product. This affects their purchases. They also struggle with navigating the website and have little to engage with. In our research, we were able to understand just what those difficulties were, uncovering the goals, needs, and frustrations of Glavel customers. To help us get to know our users a little bit better, we created user personas and journey maps, which my colleague Karen can tell you more about on the next slide.
Thank you, Mia. Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Yuen, and I'll be talking to you about our users, their journey, and our solutions from our research and findings. Glavel helped us understand that they have 3 different sectors of customers, and from our research, we started to define our users by creating 3 different user personas. A user persona is a fictional representation of our ideal user that shows similar attitude, goals, and behavior in relation to our product. We utilize our users' personas as a design tool that helped us create a great user experience. Here, we have our first user, Jocelyn, a DIY resident who is looking for an alternative aggregate to build her first family home. As a new homeowner, she does not have a background in home building and will rely on Glavel and her architect for information. Next, we have Paul, who is a senior official who works in the public sector. Because he works for a municipality, he is always tight on time and on a budget. As a result of that, one of his core needs is to be consistently updated on the progress of his projects. And for our last user, we create a multi-home builder persona, David, who is a construction project manager. He has worked with companies like Glavel in the past before, so he knows what he wants and what to expect from an aggregate company. Here we have an in-depth persona for David, the construction project manager. Because he is a PM, he holds a busy schedule, so he wants the buying process to be easy and simple as he will be reordering the product frequently. His pain points include not being informed about the delivery and installation process. Because his customers rely on him for the materials in the building process, he doesn't want any delays or miscalculations relating to the quantity of the product. From there, we created journey maps using our personas and the information we collected from the user interviews. A journey map is a visualized process of the user's feelings and their actions in order to accomplish a goal. For this journey map, I will show you Jocelyn's process, our DIY resident. She is tasked with the goal to request a quote from Glavel. As you can see here, Jocelyn didn't start her journey on a favorable note, as she isn't sure if she can find a sustainable aggregate company. But she's feeling a bit hopeful as she conducts her research. And now she's feeling a bit down again because she only found one sustainable aggregate company in the area, but reaches out to Glavel. After speaking with the representative from Glavel about her upcoming project, she's feeling a bit more confident about the product, but she still needs to discuss the timeline of her project with her architect. Things are finally looking hopeful for Jocelyn as she and her architect agrees to use Glavel. And at last, Jocelyn's journey ended on a good note when she receives the product. And now I will talk to you about our solutions from our research that Mia has presented. A big part of this organization included creating a strategy for the content that can be viewed and engaged with on the Glavel website. As our research has shown, users didn't utilize the website for the product because information wasn't there. Like the products page, the current application page lacks information as well. A key section that Glavel was missing were case studies. Adding case studies to the website will support what Glavel is as a brand and will also show credibility. We began working on solutions for some of these problems by looking at Glavel's current sitemap and figuring out what issues users had. As you see here, there isn't much content for users to engage with. This new sitemap will help Glavel customer understand the product more, how to use the product, and make their purchases on the site based on their needs. And now I will show you the redesigned sitemap in detail. Glavel as a product has somewhat of a learning curve, so we made sure to include an FAQ section for customers who may not know as much about the industry or the product itself. Glavel customers are environmentally conscious, so we thought it was best to support them by adding a sustainability page to inform them of Glavel's carbon emissions data. Glavel's current product page doesn't provide much information, so we decided it was in the user's best interest to have a page for each product for their different market sectors. Lastly, we added a product guides page that houses all the guides that are downloadable as well, so users can utilize them during their installation. And here on the second half of the redesigned sitemap, we added a few things to the homepage, like a customer portal and a request a quote option, so it's convenient for Glavel's returning customers. For their application section, we added 4 different subpages for their different consumer markets. As mentioned before, we added case studies, and we also added a few things in the About Us section, like their future and ethos. For the media page, we added reviews and a blog section per Glavel's request, as they will be updating it frequently in the future. Like case studies, having reviews on the site will prove their credibility because the concept of glass gravel is still so new to the US market. As for the contact page, Glavel's original website did not have one, so we made sure to include one. As mentioned before, a feature we added was the customer portal. We decided to create a user flow which helped us establish the order of each step of the process to help someone like Paul, our senior official who works in the public sector, track his order. Having this user flow helped us ideate what a customer portal process should act like. So here we have as our first step is to log in, which will be provided by Glavel. Once you're on the customer portal homepage, you can see your most recent quotes and your most recent orders. Paul wants to see when his product will arrive, so he scrolls down to the most recent order section. From there, he clicks on the track button. After clicking the track button, a drop-down section will pop up and show him the delivery progress bar. To help you understand a bit more about the customer portal, I will pass it on to Will so he can explain it further.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everyone. I'm Will Hart, and I'm going to be taking you through the design solutions that we came up with for Glavel's website rebuild. So one of the first and most ambitious features that we wanted to include in our redesign of Glavel's website was to integrate a customer portal, which would act as a resource for recurring customers who requested multiple orders every year. The customer portal was an idea to contend with the imminent increase in demand, the shortening of the sales cycle, and it would also assist in data collection. The portal would be instrumental in ordering product and would automate a system that currently relies on users reaching out to Glavel reps either through email or over the phone. Customers we interviewed expressed a desire to not have to go through the formal process of requesting a quote every time they wanted to use Glavel for a specific project. In addition to becoming the destination for requesting a quote and ordering materials, the customer portal would also create an index of all users' previous orders and individual details of each order. So from there, let's take a look at another element we created, the materials calculator. We wanted to provide the recurring informed buyer the ability to calculate their own materials based off the information they're likely to already have, like the length, width, and depth of their project. This way users could get an estimate without having to reach out to the Glavel rep. One of the issues we encountered in our user interviews was that customers needed to purchase 30% more than typical foundation gravel due to the compaction rate of the material. The materials calculator would account for the compaction and also the amount of insulation needed, so that users could be well informed in regards to the amount of materials they needed for any given project. But let's stop and rewind a little bit and take a look at Glavel's original site. From very early on, we knew that we wanted to completely rebuild the site from the ground up. And naturally, our first step in establishing a foundation for a redesign was collectively create wireframes. So let's take a look at our wireframes. So creating wireframes was the first step we took in creating a unified design system. We started by working off a 12-column grid for desktop and a 2-column grid for mobile. Starting with the grid system, we were able to create designs that were responsive and accessible on desktop, tablet, or a phone. Working off the same parameters, we were able to standardize elements like headers and hero images to create consistencies between our pages. We also all found importance and emphasis in areas where we decidedly broke our grid system. The wireframes were incredibly influential in creating an aesthetic and basic framework that was demonstrative of the changes we wanted to see, while also building on Glavel's brand. So from there, we move on to the design system we built. One of the most challenging aspects of creating a design system for the rebuild of Glavel's site was balancing the design directions we wanted to explore while retaining Glavel's current brand. Many of the decisions we made were in hopes of solving the issue of navigating the site and prominently displaying informative copy. One of the first design decisions we made was to retain their primary color that we refer to as Glavel orange. We tried to keep the color scheme simple outside of the vibrant orange primary color and use only black, white, and shades of gray as our secondary colors. This created a simple and effective color scheme that could be easily implemented and was also very versatile. We also wanted to explore different applications for their logo. We had only ever seen the Glavel logo in an orange box or an orange font against a black box. Naturally, our first step was to take the logo out of the black box and apply it onto a white background. We also considered applying the logo in every conceivable color combination in our limited palette. Ultimately, we thought the first revision of the logo was a success, and we applied it throughout our final mockups. For the type used throughout the site, we wanted to use a font that was modern and had a variety of different weights that could be applied throughout every page of the site. We decided on using the graphic font family and built a varied font hierarchy that was carried through every page to give emphasis to headers and provide readable and concise body and headline elements. So from there, I'm going to go and take you to our prototype of our site. So this is the homepage of the revised Glavel site. At the top of the homepage is a carousel that links to 3 of the most trafficked pages on the website. The first premier slide is to request a free estimate and would bring the user to a request a quote page. Under the hero carousel is a section that introduces, Glavel's flagship product, foam glass gravel, as well as a brief expose of the material and a succinct version of their mission statement. This section links to the product page and a more in-depth description of foam glass gravel. Under the product expose is a section that focuses on the versatility of foam glass gravel by showing all the different applications for which it's commonly used. The application section is a scrollable component that can rotate through the different application types. We decided to utilize this feature to introduce some horizontal elements onto the homepage. Under the application section is a quick look into the 3 of the most frequently asked questions about Glavel and foam glass aggregates that can also be found on our FAQ page. The final section of the homepage is meant to showcase Glavel's commitment to sustainability and environmental consciousness. This was part of Glavel's brand that was not readily featured on their current site, but something that we felt was important to be heavily showcased in our rebuild. So from there, let's go take a look at the product page. So the product page was built to be above all informative with an emphasis on creating an explanatory page. The goal is to create a system that was comprehensible and accessible for any user type. One of the things we did choose to add was a technical specification table, which would require a fair amount of background in construction and foundational materials. The section that follows the table of technical specification expands on the production process of the foam glass gravel and illustrates both sustainability and emphasis on environmental consciousness of the product, while simultaneously demonstrating how the product is created from shards of recycled glass. The final section on the product page links out to 3 of the closest relevant pages on the site to promote the idea of not having any dead ends on any page of the rebuilt site. So from there, we'll go take a look at the About Us page. The About Us page was built to both inform users to the goals and background of Glavel as a company and show you their ambitions, future plans, as well as the ethos their company represents. The page contains 3 summarizations of these talking points. The About Us page also contains a full list of Glavel's employee headshots, accompanied by a quick blurb about them that will expand over their picture when a user hovers over any given employee. This was a very intuitive solution to highlight a company that's well known for having exceptional customer service. So from there, we'll go back to the home page and check out the sustainability page. On the sustainability page, we wanted to include a carbon calculator in order to reflect the offset carbon emissions by the amount of recycled glass used by Glavel. This is meant to be a passive calculation based off estimated reduced emissions. Under the carbon calculator is a section illustrating how Glavel is leading the construction industry into a more sustainable future, accompanied by a graph of contributing carbon output. One of the most prominent areas of the sustainability page is the video, which is meant to show different applications of foam glass gravel and why it is comparable to conventional insulation and foundational materials. Finally, on the sustainability page links out to 3 of the different resources and product guides that expand on the ecological benefits of foam glass gravel and guides to assist the user in different applications and installation processes. So the last page we're going to look at is case studies. For the case study page, we wanted to use a layout that could be expanded and built upon depending how many assets and how much content the individual study had to display. For the site rebuild, we focus on the case study of Mason Lord, who's a user that we interviewed who sought out Glavel for foundation to build a certified passive house in Northeastern Connecticut. At the top of the page is a picture of the passive house alongside with a card displaying the particulars of the project, like location, date, product used, and install depth. The case narrative is displayed alongside pictures of the project, focusing on the foundation and inclusion of foam glass aggregate. We wanted the case study to be a template for all future studies while being able to expand based on how long or short the case narrative was and how many assets were provided to Glavel to work with. So with that, I'm going to pause the presentation and bring it back and hand it back over to Hannah for a summary and to finish up.
Thank you, Will. All right, so let's recap on how we got to our design solution. Based on the information we were given from our client, Glavel website users were struggling with purchasing the product and navigating content. What we found based on our research was that Glavel website users were also struggling with getting the information they needed about the product. This was causing problems during the ordering process, such as missing important details and ultimately inhibiting their ability to make a purchase. There's also a lack of engagement with the website. Because of this, we redesigned the navigation to create clear buyer paths and made the user flow more intuitive. We added a materials calculator in order to eliminate confusion during the ordering process. And we conducted more content like case studies in order to educate Glavel customers about the product and its applications. We reorganized the main navigation in order to promote user flow. And as our client had requested, we designed a customer portal to expedite recurring orders for returning customers. A project like this is always evolving and therefore truly never complete. Moving forward, if we had more time, we would like to conduct user testing specifically on the customer portal and materials calculator. This way we would have verification of our challenges and we would be able to validate our findings. But unfortunately, we didn't have time to do those. This concludes our presentation. I would like to take a moment to thank a few people who have helped us get to this point. Firstly, to our partner Glavel, specifically Tor and Alexandra. You've been positive, responsive, and supportive. Thank you for facilitating an enjoyable yet challenging experience. We really appreciate your contributions. Secondly, to Burlington Code Academy, to Josh and Sadie, as well as all of the hiring partners. Thank you for your time and your invaluable insight and resources. And of course, to Rick Mechanic and Colin Hadley for all of your dedicated time and effort, both during and after school hours. Thank you for your extensive knowledge that you've shared, along with the patience, empathy, and humor that you demonstrate daily. We really appreciate all of your hard work. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I will now hand it over to Sadie, who will facilitate questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. That was phenomenal. I knew very little about Glavel before right now. And if I ever am building, I know where to go. So awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all that hard work. So the first question that I have for you all is, this subject matter seems a little bit more dry / technical than, say, the VYOA. How did you build an emotional, empathetic connection to the project?
I can take it if no one wants to take it. During our interviews, we got to talk to Glavel customers, and they were really personable and they were really nice, and they really, really liked Glavel. And even when they were talking about problems, it was really hard for them to say anything even veering on the negative side. So it was really easy for us to kind of feel like, okay, well, these people are so great. We just really like to help them with some of their problems.
Awesome. Makes sense to me. Thank you. The next question that I have is, what kind of software technology did you use to create the sitemap?
We use Figma, and then mainly we just went through and kind of figured out one by one every page of the site. It was hard. Some were kind of hidden deep in and were hard to get to, but we managed to figure out their entire site architecture, and then we just laid it out in Figma page by page and then built it off the same kind of template.
Very cool. The next question that we have is, did the client have specific objectives in mind, or did the team discover on their own the type of help Glavel's site needed?
I can take this one. So their original objectives were they wanted to create clear buyer paths for their individual market segments. But after we conducted interviews and did some research, we actually found out that their customers were having a hard time finding the information that they need in order to make informed purchases. So we actually kind of changed the problem statement to address that. And we were able to, I think, address that really well.
I would agree. That's great. And then one of the next questions that we have is, how hands-on was your client during the discovery process?
I can take this. So we had a meeting with Glavel every week, so it was pretty hands-on. We had a point of contact. It was Mia, and Mia and Tor will always talk, and we were always CC on the email, so they were pretty hands-on.
Awesome. Makes for a good capstone sponsor. Thanks, Tor. The next question that I have is, without working with a dev team, how did you keep scalability in mind in terms of information architecture? Was it difficult to keep your designs open-ended enough to facilitate this?
I think that the grid system we created made it pretty easy to scale into mobile. I don't think we were working with elements that were very difficult to scale into like a mobile or a tablet. I think that we were always very conscious of where we broke the grid system, and when we would do something like that kind of horizontal scrolling thing for the applications on the homepage, we kind of realized that where it had 3 on the homepage, like 3 at a time with 2 kind of off the edge, that would kind of just move to 2 with 2 on the edge. So, we downsize where we need to. And I think that our grid system, and we all, like everyone, made just great wireframes. So that really helped us moving forward in all of our mockups and the prototype ultimately.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. My next question is, how did you go about collecting data from customers?
We interviewed them, and Glavel also gave us access to their Google Analytics.
Awesome. That's very helpful. Next question is, did any aspects of the project produce unforeseen problems? How would you approach them again?
I would say that, like VYOA mentioned, like time management, because Glavel's kind of in a state of working on their rebrand, already working on content strategy and expanding their business. I would say that we were kind of part of that process and helping them figure out some of those things. And so We definitely worked really hard on managing our time, trying to figure out how to allocate our time best on different parts of the website redesign.
Just to elaborate on that, I think we took on the customer portal, which was a specific request of Glavel, the client, and it was definitely an ambitious thing to take on, and we essentially created almost an entire new website that we had to frame out, build out, and design and research. So it was really cool that we got to do that extra work, but it was definitely challenging in addition to the website.
Definitely a whole nother project within one. The next question that we have is, did Glavel already have assets that you could use in the redesigned site, or was that a consideration in your plans for the sitemap?
How do you want me to take it? So they had assets that they were using on their site. They shared everything that they had with us in terms of, imagery, and like they gave us, everything that they had to give, and that was great of them, and it really helped like fill in some holes. For the most part, we found content where we could, and we used theirs wherever like it was applicable. And I think that imagery was something that we struggled with, especially when we were building the mock-ups, but I think that we made do, and I think it made it a pretty great site with what we had.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we also did a content audit and a content strategy, just to address all of their, anything that they were missing in their content. Because as I mentioned in the SWOT analysis, they were missing a lot of information that, you might want to interact with. So that was definitely something that we thought of. And when they did give us some stuff, like they gave us some new copy to put on the site, we also took matters into our own hands, and we were lucky enough to actually get some of the product, and Will took some photos for us to use in our mock-up. So we were able to actually create some content for them as well. So
that's super cool. I love that. I'm also curious, where did you get stuck most throughout the project?
I would definitely say the customer portal.
Definitely the customer portal.
And that's definitely really because it was like an entirely different world within a world. And when we were interviewing people, we thought about the website in general and specific terms, but mostly of the buying process. And at that time, we weren't really imagining that it would be going into a portal. And so we kind of had to retroactively take our research and apply it to the new website. So yeah, that was definitely challenging, but.
Sounds it. But you guys had a great solution. It's awesome. The last question that we're going to have time for before we jump into our more open question format is, can you talk a little bit more about creating personas? Did you aggregate characteristics from your user interviews? And are there other sources to better understand the user characteristics?
I can take this one. So we first created proto personas, and that was based on our industry research. And also Tor gave us 4 different marketing personas, which is a little bit different than UX. And then from the proto personas we used the user interviews and Tor's marketing personas to create our UX user personas.
Awesome. Thank you. And then second part to our last question that I think would be nice to hear from everyone on is, what website experience did you have prior to the UX Bootcamp?
I'll take it first. Mine's the easy answer, which is none. I came from the service industry and I got my degree 10 years ago, and I really haven't used a computer much since then. So I learned a lot during this boot camp, and it was quite transformational for me, and I really enjoyed it.
I'll go second. Like Hannah, I have 0 experience in the website. I graduated like 2 years ago with a public communication degree, and I work as an admin assistant.
Yeah, I would say that I had a little bit. My first year of college, I studied computer science, and then never working in a professional setting, but I made a few websites, and I later on studied marketing communication. So this is kind of like a bridge back to something I'm really interested in.
I studied graphic design in college, and then I've worked in web design for the past like 2.5 years. But I was always really focused on like, oh, that looks really good. And doing this project, it really gave me a chance to create like informed design that had a lot of thought behind it, probably for the first time.
Very cool. Yeah, it's nice that you all sort of have varied backgrounds. It's always neat to hear where you're coming from. So with that, I want to say congratulations, Glavel team. Congratulations, BYOA team. And with that, the official demo day aspect is completed. So nice work, everyone. You should feel really, really, really proud. This is awesome. And it's really nice that we all get to be here celebrating your success. So just give yourselves a round of applause. Woo!
Nice job, you guys. Nice job. Hey, before everybody starts to, I mean, we're open for some more questions, I think, Sadie.
Exactly. Yeah.
But before we jump into that, I just want to point out one other major thing is that the 2 presentations that both our groups gave today, they also had to create those in the 12 weeks that we had. So, and for anybody who's put together, you know, a deck and trying to put together a good deck, it's a lot of work. And they've been working really hard on the last couple of weeks, and I think it showed. So nice job, you guys. Well delivered, well composed, well presented. So congratulations.
Yeah, and you can always read through the chat. It'll definitely make you realize that everyone is proud of you. Yeah. So while we're here, and again, thank you all so much for attending. If you want to hang out for some more questions, wonderful. So I'm going to be jumping into those. So what I'm going to do is sort of start with questions for the VYOA team and then jump to one of the questions that was for the Glavel team, and we'll just sort of back and forth with them that way. So this question is for the VYOA team. So did you prepare any development roadmaps or UX maps during this process? And if so, how did you evaluate your problem space versus solution space modeling with the client?
I can answer, but I think Tara and Krista, I mean, you guys really took the lead on, you know, like we didn't have like a map per se, but you know, you guys took the lead in really like organizing our process. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, I'm trying to get a grip on the second half of that question. But the answer to the first half is yes, we definitely created some of those things. Specifically, we have journey maps that show the user's experience through a certain flow, as well as empathy maps that lay out how a user thinks, feels, what they say, and what they do. So we had those things to guide our user persona creation. And then as far as, let's see, what was this? Can you repeat the second part of the question for me?
Of course. So the second part is, if so, how did you evaluate your problem space versus solution space modeling with the client?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is that in the beginning, while we were developing the problem, we were thinking very clearly about how to not go into that solutioning before we got a very clear sense of what our users' problems were. It really came back to those frequent reminders of just empathizing with the users and utilizing those tools to keep the focus on that empathy before diving into the solutions. And then once we were starting to ideate and create those solutions, we did bring some of those journey maps, those empathy maps and problem statement, et cetera, to the forefront to keep that in mind while we were building.
Yeah, if I can just piggyback on that real quick for a second, just as far as like seeing the problem space versus the solution space, really, you know, as Tara mentioned, we wanted to stay like going back to empathy and the user like throughout the process. And the solution space really reveals itself throughout that process, I guess, you know. It's important, like Tara said, to not start solutioning when you you know, when you first get the brief, because no matter what you can think of, when you're not thinking about the user, it's not like it can never be correct, I guess is what I'm saying. So yeah.
Great, thank you for that. So the next question that we have is for the Glavel team. And so what we're asking them is, did you guys get a chance to change the colors, or did the client want you to stick with the orange? Also, your redesign is great.
So we were conflicted about the orange for sure. And we definitely didn't do a lot of, it definitely didn't take a lot of chances away from it. We thought that the client was like we thought that Glavel was very married to that orange, and that was like a very strong primary color that we could roll through with. And then, you know, towards the end of it, we never really did push ourselves to try anything else or like see what another color would look like or if we should pitch that. But I think looking back at it, we could have used less orange.
Orange is my favorite color, so it made me happy. The next question that we have is for VYOA. And the question is, great job, everyone. Very thorough and thoughtful, amazing implementation of the process. How did you handle certain UX design practices working remote? Did you have any concerns or pushback from the client?
So working remote was actually really wonderful. We got to use a bunch of different tools like InVision, which lets you put a bunch of like virtual sticky notes up and move them around. And, you know, we were always a Zoom call away. So I actually really enjoyed working remotely. And yeah, in terms of the client pushback, we definitely got some. Yeah, there were some, like with the colors and stuff, there was some back and forth, but overall, I think they were really on board with the decisions that we were making.
Awesome. You made good decisions, so I'm glad. Wonderful. And I'm going to ask one more question before I actually have to hop off for an info session. So if anyone wants to learn about our software development course, that's where I'll be. But I'm going to then hand it on over to Rick, and he'll ask the remaining questions. And Rick, I'll send those to you in a message, and I'll ask one more before I do that. So the next question we have is for Glavel. And the question is, was the content, like product descriptions, a joint effort in terms of language, or were you provided the information and charged with making its consumption a better experience?
We were provided the information by Glavel. Yeah.
Awesome.
Except some of the photos, as I mentioned before.
I love it. Very helpful. So give me 1 second while I hand this over to Rick, and then Rick will continue with this fun little Q&A.
Thank you, Sadie. So Colin, I think I've got the, I see they're coming up on the Google Doc. You're posting the questions here. Do I have that right?
I just shot them to you right in this chat here in a private message. So you can start with the VYOA one there, and then Glavel the rest.
Yep, gotcha. Thank you, Sadie. Okay, I think I can manage it, Colin. Thank you.
Okay. Congrats, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Sadie.
Thank you, Sadie.
Okay, so for VYOA, what were the challenges of designing a website for both mobile and desktop devices? It's a two-part question. That's the first part. What was the challenge of designing a website for both mobile and desktop?
I think it was an interesting process. The challenging part was, I think, sticking to the grid and how like that changes, and sort of making sure your design fits like these what we felt were like pretty strict parameters. And I think that was, you know, it wasn't the hardest thing in the world. It was just, it provided like just a different kind of challenge, I guess.
So example here was, did some design concepts work better for desktop and others for mobile? Did you try some different things? You know, the whole mobile first idea, or were you starting primarily with desktop and then looking at mobile?
I can answer the second half if somebody doesn't want to take it.
I can take it. So we primarily actually focused on the website and then mobile afterwards, just because the project brief was for the website directly. We did have some things like, you know, like the carousel or header hero video and stuff like that. Those are kind of weird elements to like bring to a mobile viewport. But primarily it was pretty easy to take those components and just make them fit on one column grid.
Great. Question for Glavel. How did you get the photos of the Glavel product? And do you have future recommendations for how product photography should be used throughout the site, and maybe how the photos help with customer journey?
I took all the photos of the product on the white background and then the main header image. I took in a light box in my apartment. I studied photography in school. I just thought, like, I really liked the idea. I became pretty attached to it pretty early on, of like the product on a white background. It just really, I thought, meshed well with our minimalist kind of layout, and fit in our wireframes great. And I just thought it was probably the best way to kind of just show something that going into it, you really had no idea what it looked like. And it was really cool. And I don't even think the pictures do it justice. Like, holding it was one of the weirdest objects I've ever held in my life, but it was a lot of fun to photograph. I'm happy they all made it into the site in some way.
Nice, nice. This next question is for, I'll ask it to both groups. So maybe VYOA can go first, and then the Glavel folks can take this one second. But how did you break down tasks on the team? Did everyone work on everything, or did people focus on specific tasks? And if so, who focused on what?
I could take this if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
We all kind of divvied out the work amongst us evenly, but when we found that there was a specific project or part of the project that played to one of our strengths, we could divide and conquer those aspects, or sometimes we would break off into teams of two. So like a lot of the writing and like the information architecture, that kind of stuff, like the visual hierarchy, stuff like that, Tara and Krista focused on a lot of that stuff. That was really their strengths. Anthony and I have more design backgrounds, so when it came to like putting together wireframes and stuff like that, we all came up with our own wireframes, but when we got the idea of what the main design was going to look like, it was really like we divided the work between Anthony and I to do a lot of that stuff.
Nice. How about Glavel? How did you guys approach it from a standpoint of division of labor, and who did what, and how did you guys work together as a team?
Take this one. So Mia was assigned our project manager, and she was in charge for doing a lot of the organizing and delegating, and that was exponentially helpful throughout the entire process. She definitely deserves a lot of credit for what she did. Will was our design guru, and he definitely he has a really good eye and great style. And Karen and I definitely were more focused on the research. I think we were a little more generalists, but I feel like we collaborated really well together on almost every aspect of the project. I thought we worked really well as a team, personally.
Nice. Okay, so let's see here. We've got a question. This one is for Glavel, and this might be the last question that we have. And now that we have a smaller group here, I would say that after I ask this question, if anybody else has any questions for either team, you can just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. But let me ask this one question. First of all, it's nice work, everyone. It's truly a gift to have a client with such great customer service accolades. This is Glavel. Did you think about highlighting this as a section on the index page or on the home page? Those accolades.
We didn't think of having it on the homepage necessarily, but since we didn't get a chance to go through mock-ups of all of our pages, we actually also created a reviews page for selected reviews from customers about their Glavel experiences. So yeah, that was definitely part of our content redesign.
Very nice. Okay, those are all the questions that we have that have been submitted. I think we've covered everything. Any questions from anybody else in the audience before we've got about 9 minutes of the originally scheduled programming here. Does anybody else have any questions for the teams? Okay, well, if not, I really want to thank you guys. Thank you, students. Excellent job, everybody. Another round of applause for the group. Thank you again to our capstone sponsors, our capstone clients. Without you all, we couldn't do this work. Again, want to thank our hiring partners, anybody who's here, anybody who's spoken to our students during some of our lunch and learns. We have other folks who have actually made themselves available to our students like outside of lunchtime, taking time away from their work. So for all of you guys who help us do our jobs and help our students learn, we thank you all. So with that said, if everybody is good, anything anybody wants to say before we say goodnight? I would say I'd like the students to come back to our main classroom if you can, right after we hop off here. And I just want to have a couple quick words with you guys before I send you on your way. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And have a great evening. Happy holidays. Be safe. And 2021 is not too far away. So we'll look forward to that. All right. Take care, guys. Thank you so much.